because there's so much over here. I'm on the Rue de Beaujolais, so we're right on the backside of the Palais Royal. It's right through that arcade right there. Give everybody a second here. I'll show you guys the cool Napoleon place. So this is like the official place if you want Napoleon stuff here. And I did walk by here the other day and they cleaned it up because in this other window here, see, look at, you could even have a piece of David's. They had the little soldier guys. They had one of them in the corner doing something naughty to one of those little ladies, but they cleaned it up. So let's see. Here we go. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I can't see if everybody's in, but hopefully so. So here we're on Rue de Beaujolais, so the backside of the Palais Royal. You see the dude over there singing. But here at number 5, this used to be a nightclub, and it was called Milord. And if that sounds familiar, it might, because Edith Piaf had recorded a song that somebody else wrote, but it was about the gentleman that owned this little nightclub here at number 5. And it was opened from the early 1900s until about 1946. And this is where Serge Gainsbourg first performed ever. It got really nice this afternoon. The sun kind of came out. You can see some blue sky up there. And so it's just very busy down and around here today. It's probably going to quiet the farther we go from Palais Royal. But here on the backside at number 9, you see that plaque right up there? That's Colette. So number 9 is where Colette lived. So on the other side, I showed you the other side last week, was a little marker that's kind of underneath her window. And this is where she lived. And the Palais Royal is pretty cool. And I know Angela's on there because I saw her. It's the first chat I saw. They do not on this side, but over around the corner, the people that own Verjus and Ellsworth, which I will also show you today, own what is called the 22 Club here, and it is amazing. And Angela was so very sweet to take me there when she was here last fall. It was absolutely amazing. The food is amazing. It's really hard to get in. Angela says you have to basically be up at midnight the day they release the tickets and grab them as fast as you can. And it is worth it. But what was also really cool about it is that you got to go inside an apartment at Palais Royal. And it's their whole floor. So most people have like number 9 right there where the blue door is. They have all the way up there. That's their apartment. And it's probably like 2 windows across. So just think how much that costs. So we're going to head up. This is the Rue Vivienne, but we're going to take a little quick offshoot over here to the left so I can show you one of my favorite restaurants. And if you haven't been back to Paris since the fall, you will have not seen that there is a really cool thing that's finally open. And this is right across the street, it's the Bibliothèque Nationale. And it has reopened after, I think, 7 or 8 years of redoing it. But pretty much as long as I've been coming here, this has been covered up. So it's very cool that this is finally done. And we're going to walk down the side of it and I'll tell you all about it and how anybody could just walk in there now, just certain parts of it. But this is it. It is gorgeous. And this was originally the palace of Cardinal Mazarin. There's going to be 2 cardinals we're going to talk about today. This was Cardinal Mazarin's home. I'll tell you more in a minute. But this place right here is one of my favorite places, Willie's Wine Bar. It is absolutely fantastic. They do a really great lunch special where you could have a choice of 2 things, and it's about 28 euros. I just brought my friend Chrissy here the other day where she has a brief stopover in Paris. But what's also really cool is they make these really great posters, which might be hard to see. Here's a version of one of them. It is the oldest wine bar in Paris that is also a restaurant in the form of a restaurant. Most wine bars back then were just, you know, you went in and got wine, there wasn't any food. And this opened in 1980. So Mark, the owner, originally from England, he opened it with a couple of friends, and Willie, it was the name of his dog. It was the black lab, and that was Willie. And Willie, as you can imagine, passed on long ago. But it is fantastic. I've never, ever had a bad meal there. The people are wonderful, including Mark, the owner. They're really, really great. Yeah, it was quiet as can be this morning at about 8:39 when I walked through here. It was lovely. Sunday mornings are the best day in time of the entire week. So here, you might all know this place, the Grand Colbert. And most people know it because of that movie poster. It's here in the window from, was it Something's Gotta Give? I think it's the name of the movie. The Grand Colbert. So Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton, who I love, they have kind of the ending scene in that restaurant. And then they apparently walk down the street at they're at the Hotel de Ville. But it is very, very popular with tourists. And I actually went there with a group of ladies that I was with for a week back in April. It was actually the day that Macron was reelected, but it was also the day that my grandma passed away. So I was mustering everything I could to get through the evening, but I actually was not impressed. I didn't think the food was very good. The servers were pretty horrible, and I have no issue with servers in France. And I worked as an event planner for 25 years, so in the restaurant business. So I usually will not say that unless it's pretty drastic, but I didn't think the food was very good, and it was really, really overpriced, as you can imagine. So if you're going to come here, unless that movie is your favorite movie in the whole world, I would skip it. And I'm saying that off of my own experience that I had there. Take it with what you will. I'm never going to be that person that's just going to give you the beret and sipping a coffee at a cafe version of Paris. You could get that from just about everybody else on the internet. So here is the side entrance of the bibliothèque. You see this very lovely garden with palm trees here, which are so native to Paris, but it's really pretty. You could go in here, anybody could go in here. It has the Bibliothèque Nationale holds the collection of quite a few of France's greatest pieces of history. You can see the throne of Dagobert, who was one of the very first kings of the Franks, long before it was Paris. And it lots of things in there, things that go back to medieval times, to Roman times, all the way up. There was one wall that's just kind of right on this side of it that is just covered with all these different medals and medallions that belong to all the different kings and queens, and it's really, really cool. But Mazarin had this built in 1635, and in 1721 is when it turned over to be the Bibliothèque Nationale. Then the collection became so big because of all the documents and books and everything that it has. It had to open up the other one that's over in the 13th. And the one in the 13th is the one that's Francois Mitterrand created, and it has the huge modern buildings that look kind of like open books. Kind of cool. But anybody could go in here. There is actually a part of the library that you could go in there and study, but it is usually filled with tons and tons of students. So especially if you go early in the morning, they all kind of just rush in and fill up the place. But it is really cool. There's another side, which we're going to come back down on the other side on Rue de Richelieu. And there's another library over there, but that is where you have to get accredited and you have to basically pass all these things just to be able to go, because it's kind of the history of art. And it's amazing. I've been in there before, and it's the room is just gorgeous. This one's pretty cool inside too. It's definitely no chump change, but it is really cool. So here's the Galerie Vivienne, which is one of the passages. I was going to go in there today, but I'm going to save that for next week. And then we're going to head down Rue Vivienne. So Rue Vivienne was named for a family that actually lived here. And so when their houses were destroyed, he decided to name the street. And he was also one of the, he was a mayor of Paris at the end of the 16th century. But you have, look at these doors. There's not a lot of the stuff, the buildings around here. There's only one building, which I'll show you on the other side, that really dates back to that 16th century. It's still standing. Everything else is more 17th century. Cute little ones. So you go in here, there's, when you go in here, the bibliothèque, you come up here and there's this room, this long room right there that has like these paintings on the ceiling and the walls of the muses and has Louis XIV on. It's really, really cool. And I will try and put those all in a newsletter maybe next week. This week's already going to be about Delacroix. So make sure if you don't subscribe to my newsletter, go to my website, ClaudineHemingway.com, because I give very long, in-depth, even more history there. So here where we are on Rue Vivienne, what used to be number 9, and I looked up here today and I was like, what is that? And then I see my birthday, April 26th. And this guy, Edward Leon Scott de Martigny, he died here on April 26th. But look, he was born the day before, April 25th. At least he had a birthday party, I guess. But he is the guy that did the very, very first recording of sound. And just in 2003, they found one of these recordings, which they knew he did this long ago. But in 2003, they used new technology and they were able to get from the recording from the 19th century somebody singing Au clair de la lune. How amazing is that? I love this little street. So I'm gonna go down here, but this is Rue Colbert. But do you see that building way down at the very end that kind of bows out? This is a very old building. That is not the oldest building, but that is one of these very old buildings. And this was one of the first stock exchanges was in that building. We'll see it from the other side. Oh, something over here really stinks. So that's Paris. But it looks like there's quite a few. There's Celine here. There's quite a few clothing designers down here. And we are straddling the first. We walk over the first into the second. Then we'll go from the second back into the first, just basically kind of on these two streets. Look at this door. Kenzo. How gorgeous is that? And it's good. It looks like the sun sets 6:17, so it's getting later every day, and the sun's coming up earlier every day, which is fantastic. And I think we already turn our clocks, or the states do it before. I think the beginning of the month. And this is a building I seem to always get asked about if I'm walking people around this area. And this interesting building here is the Bourse, which used to be the stock exchange, the major stock exchange. This was built in 1808 by Napoleon, which is kind of reminiscent of the Madeleine. But this was a stock exchange. It served as a stock exchange all the way up till 1998. There's no longer a French stock exchange now. It is just the European stock exchange that's not here. But they do events now. So you could rent it out for some large events. And this little market, this must have been yesterday, or maybe it's set up for tomorrow because it was not. No. No. Zizou, the great French soccer player, but my beloved Olivier Giroud is better. He's the highest scoring in French history, national team history. So here You can see the Bourse. The Bourse de Commerce is another one that is just right over there at the edge of Leal. And that was also a stock exchange, but it was more a stock exchange for commodities like wheat, and actually at one point stored wheat in there. It is a really, really cool building inside. Even if contemporary art's not your jam, which is not mine, it is really worth it just to go inside to see the building. But look, it's pretty cool. But yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, I got to see if there's an event so I can go inside and see it. If you go up here around the corner, is one of those delicious chocolate shops, Duil, which is the guy that created the special chocolates for Marie Antoinette because she didn't like the taste of her medicine. And you can still get the same exact chocolates with her crust on it. But they sell them there. But my favorite there is the Bonbon Napoleon, because they are roasted and caramelized almonds covered in chocolate. And one time I went in there and I said, oh, about this many. And they put them in a bag and it was 50 euros. So since then, I only get a couple, but they are delicious. So this, if you might have seen this before, this little area, this street is called the Rue des Colons. And you can see columns here. These ones were redone in the 1990s. But this is one of the only examples, one of the very, very few examples of architecture that actually happened during the revolution. So these were created during the revolution, and they are inspired by the Palace of Poseidon. It's in Greece. And they used to go all the way through. So it used to be, there used to not be a street here, the Rue de la Bourse. And then they cut through it and separated these buildings. I can't even imagine how they did that. But this one over here, you can see over, it says like 1998. So this is a more contemporary building, but they made it look kind of older. There's a street, which is kind of one of the whole reasons why I wanted to come down here today that I'll show you, because it has a really cool history that I don't think many people know. But if you are an avid reader of my history every day on Instagram, you will know as soon as I say it. You have all these contemporary. This area is a lot of businesses. So during the weekend, it's a little quieter. A lot of the restaurants will be closed. We're going to zigzag around a little bit. Somebody had a good time. Look at that big old bottle of champagne. It's a very expensive big old bottle of champagne. Oh, this is like a little outdoor gym. They're kind of cool. They have these down by where the Statue of Liberty is in the middle of the Seine too. Coming up here on the Rue de 4 Septembre. This building is really pretty. Newer as well. Credit Lyonnais. Look at those cool straps. More modern, but still with that cut. It has not rained in the last 2 weeks, which has been great. If you listen to the 2 podcast episodes we did about the flood, which was really fascinating to learn everything that I did about that. Now I'll be terrified of a lot of rain and warm temperatures in the winter, because that's how the big 1910 flood and quite a few of the other floods happened. When the very first trip I came to Paris, September 2016, I stayed very close to here. We're going to go down the street where it is, but we're veering off before we get to that street. But I remember because I remember thinking how cool it was because we were going at the closest metro stop to us was the Rue de 4 September, and I was arriving on the 4th of September. So that was so cool. That date is to signify the beginning of the Third Republic. And if you look all the way down there, it's Cluster. This building here on the right is very different from what was very different there. But this street right here, the Rue de Gomo, this street is named after, can I go? Named after the Marquis de Gomo, who was part of the Noisier family. They, again, owned a huge piece of this land over here. And so then, you know, nothing remains of their buildings, but they have a name on the street. But what's really cool, I'm gonna go over here. What's really cool about this street is that a couple weeks ago, I wrote the story about the street numbers in France. And that's one of those things I think we just take for granted, that we just figure street numbers were always around, but they weren't. And they weren't around until Napoleon set a decree in 1808 to say everything had to be numbered. And there was this one dude named Marin de Storck, and he was writing the Almanac of Paris in 1779. And he was getting tired of trying to say what, you know, a building was, because he was writing his almanac, which I don't have a copy of his, but I have a copy of one from the early 19th century. And it is, you know, instead of saying, you know, you couldn't say number 4 Rue de Grammont, it would say something like the third door from the intersection is this house, or you would count by the lamppost. So it could be like lamppost number 5 from the Seine is where, you know, Monsieur Hemingway lives. And so this dude, Mr. Storks, came here in the middle of the night on Rue de Grammont, which starts right here at the corner and then goes down about 4 blocks. And most of these, like I came down here this morning, and most of all of these buildings, they most likely were not here, because you can see this block right here. They're definitely newer. But he, in the middle of the night, came here and he would just put numbers. He decided, and it started on the street. So this was the first street in Paris that had numbers on it. And he just did it in the middle of the night with paint and with some assistance. And I just think that's just so cool. But then partially why they decided to put numbers on it was to make it easier to find things. But of course, it also had to do with money, because then they were able to tax people. They were able to send information and say you own these taxes, and also for fire and police. But there were still some cities in France that until 30 years ago did not have numbers on their houses. And they still revolted against it because they knew that that's how they were going to get taxed. And now everybody has to have it. And when Napoleon did that rule, was only for Paris in 1808. So now we cross over here, and this is the Rue Saint Anne. And it's Saint Anne, but it's not Saint Anne, the mother of Mary. It is Saint Anne. It is Madame Anne, mother of Louis XIV. And this is what used to always be just where you'd find all of the Asian restaurants in Paris. And now, like in my neighborhood, there was a ramen place that always had a huge line of people. And then after COVID, now there's tons of Asian restaurants in the neighborhood, sushi and everything, which is great because I love sushi. But the ones that are here in this neighborhood are fantastic. And when I first stayed here, I think it was just right down there past that little red awning. I think that's where the apartment was. And it was so cool. It was this really great apartment on the top floor with an elevator, and it looked out from the window. You could see the tops of the opera house, those beautiful statues. And here's this, the lady that owned it, her sister lived across the hall. Her family owned the whole building, and she worked for the Louvre. And This was prior to I'm obsessed with everything about the Louvre. And the place isn't on Airbnb. It was basically never on Airbnb again. So I would love to talk to her. She had this whole wall that was literally floor to ceiling, and the ceilings were like 2 stories, floor to ceiling bookcases, and there was half of them were books on Picasso. I so wish I could go back. But it was my first trip. I would not have been inside all day looking at books. But so we're on the Rue de Louvois. I love this little place. I want to come back here when it's open. It's a guy that it's a frame store. And this is the square de Louvois. I hope should be open. Uh-oh. It looks like it might already be closed. Darn it. Okay, well. This park, yep, it's already closed. So this little park has this amazing little fountain in it. But what used to be here, it used to be the opera house. It was the opera house of the Richelieu, so Rue de Richelieu. And this is where the Duc de Berry in 1820, who was the son of Louis Philippe, he was stabbed and then died here hours later. And so then as soon as he died, they closed it and tore it down. And then they ended up building this fountain here, which is gorgeous. And it has the 4 major rivers of France on it. So there's the Rhone, the Garonne, the Loire, and the Seine. And then they go all the way around. It's a little reminiscent of the Wallace Fountains around the base of it, where it has a different masculine spitting out water. And then it has the signs of the zodiac all the way around it as well. And it's really, really pretty. I took some really pretty pictures with the sun and the blue skies this morning. So I'll share those. I'll put this on the website. Oh, wait a minute. There's people in there. Let's go around. We're going to walk over here real quick because might be where all those people are. But Louvois, he was a minister of Louis XIV, and very high-ranking minister, and he kind of came to blows with Jean-Baptiste Colbert, because Colbert, this was at the time of the poison affairs, which we have 2 special episodes coming up about that the week after this on the podcast. You think these people are going to want to hear the story I'm about to tell you guys? Here for number 12. So this building right here, which is obviously been rebuilt since quite a long time ago, it's a very big building. It's like, usually they can't be this big. So this is, usually they're not supposed to go over, anything new is not supposed to go over 6 stories. But this building is where a very, very famous brothel was. And this is number 12, Rue de Chabanais, and that's what it was called. It was just called the Chabanais. And this is where everybody from Cary Grant to Humphrey Bogart, Mae West, but there was a very certain gentleman who just loved to come here when he came over from England. And he was a son of Queen Victoria, Bertie Edward. And so Dirty Bertie, as he was called, would come to Paris and visit the brothel. And it was a Madame Kelly that owned it. She originally was from Ireland, and it was open from 1878 to 1946. And she had it all decorated. So there'd be a Japanese room, and there'd be like a Hindu room and a Ponte room and a Louis XV room, because he was really known for being with the ladies as well. But Dirty Bertie would come here, and he had a custom-made huge copper bathtub made, because he was a pretty big guy there towards the later years of his life before he was king. And he would come here, and he at one point had this very special chair sort of made. And you can look it up on the internet and find a picture of it. And I think I actually just mentioned this recently, but it was it had what looked kind of like stirrups. I think all the ladies understand that. It had stirrups like you were at the doctor's office. But it was because he'd gotten so large that this way he could have two ladies at the same time, we shall say. That's Dirty Birdie. And there's a statue of him over not very far from the Madeleine, in the middle of this really cool kind of how they created the buildings in kind of an octagon shape. This is it seems to be, there was people lined up this morning about an hour before it even opened to this purse store, or handbag store, I should call it. So let's see. Oh, maybe those people just jumped the fence. Or maybe they're just stuck in there. Because this side's locked too, but you can see. Look at how pretty it is. And then they have part of the park too is named after two women that were very big during the resistance. And they actually had a huge part that they played in the liberation of Paris and here at the Bibliothèque Nationale, which is right behind me. So here you have, this is this big side. When you come in, this is the side you could only go in if you're going, you have all the credentials to do it. So here's that building that I showed you that I mentioned was one of the first stock exchanges. So this is what is the Hotel de Nevers, and this is the Rue Colbert. So Colbert, I mentioned, he was another huge, he was basically Louis XIV's right-hand man for a very long time. And he also had a house around here. So you had Richelieu, who had Palais Royal, you had Mazarin that had what became the Bibliothèque Nationale, and then Colbert was kind of down here at the end of the street as well, on part of the property that is now the Bibliothèque Nationale. So all of those guys were over here. Under Louis XIV is when they also started redoing a lot of Ile Saint-Louis. So a lot of those buildings on Ile Saint-Louis at one point belonged to the high-ranking members of the court of Louis XIV, including Bontemps, who was kind of his main valet. And if you watch the TV series Versailles, look at how cool and old this is. This is very, very, very old. And you have all the netting on there to kind of keep it together. I don't think that plaque says anything, but there is still history of the theater. You can see straight down the street. Go on, Rue de Richelieu. I wanted to use my fancy new little camera I got, but I've got to test it out to make sure it even works with Zoom. So I'm gonna try to do that this week. Maybe even just make some videos with it and post it and share it and see how those turn out before we do a live. But yeah, there was like, there's lines of people waiting. I mean, there are no Louis Vuitton. Look at this one. This is a great door. So there's going to be a couple of really great doors down here as well. No, I just thought that it was that's it. What a hideous hat. I'm a Red Sox fan. That was the one thing that's the only bad thing I could say about my first trip to Paris was how many New York hats were there. Sorry, Chrissy. She's probably sleeping. Look at this little guy. I was like, there was too many New York hats, but for the French people, it's just the New York, the city. It's not really, they don't really get baseball. I've had long conversations with Frenchmen about baseball. They don't understand it. So here on the corner, this is the corner that was the home of Colbert. It's over here. So it's all because we are so close to the Louvre. Because the Louvre, these guys under Louis the 13th and Louis the 14th needed to be close to him. So this building right here on the corner, is the oldest building in this neighborhood that would have been here at the time of Richelieu. So Richelieu in his big red cape and his fancy cardinal outfit might have just like strolled right past this. This building might have seen him, which is kind of cool. Colbert and Richelieu and Mazarin were extremely powerful. Of all of them, Richelieu is definitely the most powerful of all of them. The money his family had, the money that the church had, and the power that he had over everything. And it was Richelieu that came to very big odds with Marie de Medici, the mother of Louis the 13th, because Louis the 13th, when he turned 13, his mother did not give him the right to rule France. She kept on holding on to it because she thought that he wasn't quite ready, but really she was just power hungry. And Richelieu used that to his advantage. So over here, there is a little passageway over there, the passage to Beaujolais, and that leads down to the street that we started on. So we're one street off of the Palais Royal now. There's the Rue de Montpensier that's on the other side, and then here we have Rue de Richelieu. But here at number 50, which is now a hotel, is where Madame de Pompadour lived and grew up when she was a child. That's where her mother lived. Look at that ironwork over the door. Gorgeous. The Madame de Pompadour, of course, would go on to be the great love of Louis the 15th. This wine bar right behind us, Juvenile, is an amazing, amazing wine bar. Always crowded, very difficult to get into. And then now, here comes, and my little title of this is also about a playwright. And here he comes, Mr. Molière, who I have a big fondness for because he did something historical in my building. But where this building is now, this is not the building that was here, but this is where he was when he died. Just 350 years ago on Friday. So on February 17th, 1673, he died, and it was in this building. And the story of his death is because we are right at the street from the Comédie Française, and he was on stage. He was performing on stage, and he was a playwright, but he was also an actor. He would act in his own plays, and he ended up not feeling very good, and he was in this green chair. They have the green chair there if you go to the opera and you do a tour, which I don't think they do that frequently, but every once in a while. And it's in a case, and it's 350 or older, and so it's not very good shape, but it's in a case, and that's the chair he sat in. And so ever since that time, because he died in a green chair, it is bad luck to wear the color green on stage. It's all those little things like you don't say break a leg, all those kinds of things, or you say break a leg, you don't say good luck. I think that's the way it goes. But he ended up leaving. He kind of basically passed out in the chair, and then once he was feeling better, they walked him home, and he walked us right up the street, and he came back to where this building is today and died 2 days later. But what's right here is very exciting because it was actually maybe one of the fastest restoration projects I've ever seen, is this amazing statue and fountain of Molière that was done by Visconti, who also did the fountain in the Devoir that we saw just down the way. But he designed this whole thing. He ended up commissioning two different artists. Bernard Soulier did the bronze statue up there of Molière in his chair. And then James Prater did the two women. So there are comedy and tragedy. And on these scrolls, get you closer, are all of the different works of Moliere. The Tartuffe is an incredibly famous one that he did. What is the one? Oh, Le Malade Imaginaire. That is the one that he was performing in when he died. I saw that here in Paris. And Daniel Autier, who is a very famous French actor and singer, and he is amazing. And he was playing the role, the main role, and it was so cool. I saw it on Easter a few years ago when I was here. It was a day that was like 80 degrees, and I was in the theater was about 100 degrees. It was so hot, but it's all cleaned up. And I always love this one because when I first came to Paris, I stayed on Rue Saint Anne. And then I went to Italy and I was supposed to be there for 10 days, decided, nope, it's not for me. And after 2 days, I turned around and came back to Paris by myself. A friend of mine at the time lived in Italy. And I came back by myself and I stayed in a hotel just right down here, down the street that we walked by, the Hotel Richelieu. And I stayed there because I was coming back by myself and I thought, hey, I already know this neighborhood. I knew where to walk. And so he always played a really important moment. And then now I live in a building where he did something super cool, but I won't say. But it is, I just love coming here and seeing this. And I'm glad that he's all uncovered. But also right here, and definitely make a note of this if you have not been here yet, there is a restaurant, this little tiny one that's glass with the little tree with the hearts on it. That restaurant's called Ellsworth. Ellsworth is attached to Verjus, which was just down the street. I forgot to point it out. It's sadly still not open. It's been closed since before COVID because they're having a little dispute with their landlord on some things. And so it should be reopened soon. I've seen some little hints at it, but they're also the same people who have the 22 Club. And they are actually one, it's a husband and wife. And then one of the original chefs was originally from Seattle, so Pacific Northwest. But it's absolutely amazing. And when you go there, on the appetizer menu is fried chicken. And just, even if it's just you by yourself, just order two. If there's more than that, if there's 2 or 3 of you, then you're going to need like 4 or 5, because it's just little, like just kind of a smaller than maybe a baseball size of fried chicken. No, and I don't think it has any bones, but it is the most delicious thing you'll ever eat. It is, oh, it's so good. And they have a sauce that goes with it. Oh, it's just absolutely divine. And a tour guide here that I know that does really great tours if you're coming here with little kids. She was here recently and I was like, did you have the fried chicken? And she was, it wasn't on the menu. I was like, pas possible. It has to be. But it definitely come in here and check it out, Ellsworth. I have a full list on my website, ClaudineHemingway.com, of some of my favorite restaurants, and that is definitely on it, as is Willie's. Look at this door. I've shared this door a couple times before. Look at how gorgeous that door is. Just beautiful. I love all of that carving and the red. Red. I am today, because it was warmer, I am wearing my grandma's ultra suede khaki jacket. I'll show it to you guys. Do that. But I put it on today. I've never worn it before. And when I reached into the pocket, there was like three Kleenex in it. And I had to laugh because if you reach into any of my coats, you'd probably find 2 or 3 Kleenex in it as well. And I was like, oh boy, don't you know you're getting older when you start sucking away the Kleenexes. Okay, so number 26 here, we did a podcast episode about this woman, and she was one of the very first famous clothing designers, and her name is Rose Bertin. She was the one that designed clothes for Marie Antoinette. She lived over here at number 26, and just right down here, she had her little shop. She was basically the very first, anybody. She was the very first Yves Saint Laurent. She was the first Jean d'Arc. I will not say that other woman's name. It's a famous French designer, but she also was the one with Marie Antoinette's help, and then Marie Antoinette's hairdresser. They created the very first fashion magazine, so it was more of a pamphlet at the time. But she had the very, very first fashion store that was run and owned by a woman, and she became all of the women of the court. Of course, you know, they all wanted to look like Marie Antoinette, and be, you know, using her designer just gave you a big advantage. So she was really, really cool. I wanted to go down the little passage, but they're closed today on Sundays. Look at that sweet little heart. But Rue de Richelieu itself goes back to 1633. The Rue Vivienne, that actually dates all the way back to being one of the Roman roads that dated all the way back to Roman times, obviously. And it was a road you would take to Saint Denis, which is where, named after Saint Denis, who lost his head, picked it up, took it there. And we're just almost right back down here. Towards the Louvre. Here, in case you want to go to a boxing club. Take out some aggression, maybe. There's Cafe Kitsuni. There's one in the Palais Royal too. It's one of those very Instagram. You gotta go here for coffee. I've had people ask me where to get the best cup of coffee. And even though I was raised in the Pacific Northwest, I like coffee, but just to kind of wake me up. I'm not at all what you would have call a bean connoisseur or anything like that. It's just wakes me up, does the job. So some people say that the coffee in Paris is horrible, and I do know the difference between good stuff and bad stuff. And I've had some pretty bad coffee before, but they're supposed to be pretty good. Here's the Comédie Française. You know who that is right there? That is Rachel. And Rachel Felix was the very first international star. And we did a podcast episode about her too. And I'll put a link to all those things on my website after we upload the video to YouTube, fingers crossed. And I'll put links to all of these people that I mentioned that we've done podcast episodes about. And tomorrow is part 2 of the Henri Desiree Landru podcast episode. We had to do 2. He was a French serial killer, and he would find these women. He was married, but he would find these women because it was World War I, and he would put these ads in the paper saying that he was a wealthy widow, and he was looking for somebody that would want to spend time with him, that was maybe in the same, you know, bracket as him. And then he would meet, sometimes he had over 400 women that answered these ads, and he would go meet them and size them up. And very quickly he would woo them, court them, have them put him on their bank accounts and power of attorney and everything. And then he would take them away for the weekend to his country home, and they would never be seen again. And he was one of the very first serial killers that actually disposed of their bodies. And so he had a very large oven, and he would chop off their head and hands and feet. So it's a really lovely story, but it was really fascinating. And Colette, who we talked about the last 2 weeks of walks, who will walk out here and end up at Place Colette, she was a writer that was there. And then we're going to do another one in the next couple of weeks, another true crime lady. And Colette was actually writing about it at that trial too. So kind of funny. There's always not really sure what's going on out here. I probably shouldn't be here because the music. Here's all the, always busy. We walk past? Oh, wait, I think we did walk past this the other day. This is so cool what they've done to this building, covering it in this mirror. It's just a temporary structure where they're doing work here on the old mall that was the Louvre here on the side. But it's kind of cool because depending on where you stand, it's almost like it disappears because it just mirrors the facade of that beautiful, beautiful building right there. So, yeah. So there we go. That's our little walk today. Here, should I turn around? Let's see how crazy my hair looks. Hi, y'all. Yeah, see, this is my grandma's coat. I took the Kleenex out of the pockets, but this was her coat. I actually brought a couple. I have 2 or 3 coats that were hers that 2 of them my grandpa got for her in Japan when he was there during the war. And then I've got hopefully it'll get cold enough for a night so I could wear her full length coat that my mom at one point was like, we don't need that. And I was like, yeah, we do. And I'm taking it to Paris. So where else could you wear it but Paris? So I will definitely get that out. I don't know if I'll wear it for a walk. It might be a little much to wear for a walk, but here is the beautiful Paris. It's definitely getting, it's in the 50s. It looks like it's going to be back in the 30s tomorrow morning, but it's still lovely. It's going to be sunny, I think. Should I check the comments? Oh, look, I can see lots of your smiling faces. Hi, Jean. Jean and Sharon, you guys are always like right up there at the top. But like the 5 pictures I see, it's always you two. And Terry, hi, Terry. Let's see. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, the Cafe Vivienne, Sharon, is great. We were gonna walk over there, but then I'm gonna do it tomorrow because I want to share a bunch of stuff with you guys about that statue of because the pieces of it, the original statue is in the Louvre, and it's one of those stories that when I take people to the Louvre, it's a story I tell a lot. But I want to take you guys there next week, and there's a church over there that's really cool, and I thought we could hit the Passage. And so I was even thinking it would be kind of cool if I would be able to do it where I could start each week's tour where the week before left off, but I don't think that's always possible, especially if it's like a special theme one I want to do because of a certain moment in history or, something fun like that. But make sure you guys follow the podcast. You can get everything at ClaudineHemingway.com. I also will put in there, I'll make the event for this next week's right away. I'll do that this evening. I have my new fancy desk that I got last Monday, got delivered from IKEA, and I spent 4 hours putting it all together. It's huge. It takes up pretty much one wall of my apartment. But I'm so happy because now I have a place to work. And when I'm doing research, I have to have a lot of space because I'll sometimes have 2 or 3 books open and then all my own notebooks that I take a million notes in. And I should show those to you guys all someday. Because you would probably, a lot of people say, you could put that in the computer, but that's actually how I remember everything is by writing. They say that if you actually just write it by hand, it goes into your brain. And that definitely is true for me because as soon as I do that, it definitely gets locked in there. So, but I'll show you guys that. Maybe I'll do that as a special Patreon thing. So, and I appreciate all of you guys that support and watch every single week. And if you want to leave a tip, you could send that to my Venmo or PayPal at ClaudineHemingway.com, or there's even on my Instagram and my profile, there's a little thing that says like, buy me a glass of champagne, and you could do a little amount that you want. And I'd appreciate that. I do put quite a bit of time into doing these. So I'm happy to do it, and I love to share it with you guys. And then of course, if anybody's coming to Paris and you want to do a tour, of course, I seem to spend a lot of my time in the Louvre, but I do other tours of Orsay. I could do pretty much any tour of any museum in the city, as I know all of them so well, and also the streets. So I do a lot of custom tours. All of my tours are custom and private. So it is just you and me. It's never with a big group of other people. So it also makes it really great. If you have questions, you can feel free to ask anything. But I could, just because I know so much about the city, it is easy for me to just on the fly. I had somebody the other day staying over here at the Hotel Regina, and I met them, and they wanted to go around the neighborhood. But when I got there, they said, you know what we want to see? We want to see La Chapelle, and we want to see this, this, and this. And I was like, all right, let's go. So doing these walks and the podcast and everything and writing all I do for Instagram is great, because all that stuff just gets locked into my brain. And when you're here, if you want to do a tour of anything at all, I could do it, which most guides have a very scripted tours that they do, and they kind of do the same thing every time. And that's not fun for me or you. So I love it that every tour I do is pretty much never the same. It's always different. So if you come to Paris, look me up, ClaudineHemingway.com. And if you want to send a tip, you could do that at Claudine at ClaudineHemingway.com on Venmo or Zelle or even PayPal, any of those things. But thank you guys so much for joining. And thank you, Debbie and Ron. I think I saw that you were down there still at Aix-en-Provence, and hopefully you'll come back up and I'll see you before you take off. But I will head back over to my side of the river and bid you adieu, but I will see you next week. And if not before then, make sure you follow my stories, because I put a ton in my stories. I spent a couple hours yesterday posting all about the new exhibit at the Delacroix, and I'm going to put that in my newsletter that will come out this week as well. So I'll put a bunch of details about that in there as well. So lots and lots of ways to get all your history from me. If you want to support me on Patreon, you could do that too. And I would appreciate it, anything. And I just appreciate you guys watching and following along and cheering me on in my voyage to Paris. And I will see you guys all next week.